to welcome you back to our study in the book of 2 Corinthians. Again, the 2 Corinthians, the 9th chapter, is talking about the taking of an offering. It's talking about giving. And if you haven't been keeping up, I want to just encourage you to go back and listen to all of these podcasts, starting actually with chapter 8, because it is so essential that believers know the principles of giving. Giving is an essential part of the Christian life. It's something that every believer needs to know how to do, why to do, what to do. It's so essential. And so the Apostle Paul is taking an offering for the saints in the city of Jerusalem. He's not taking it for himself. He's taking it for the saints. He's sending not only himself, but he's also sent sending three men ahead of him, Titus, Luke, Trophimus, to prepare for this offering that the Corinthians have been taking for a year. And this is what he says now in verse number 8, 2 Corinthians, the 9th chapter, verse number 8. And again, this is given by the Apostle Paul to the Corinthians as an assurance. But this is what he says, and God is able to make all grace abound to you, so that always having all sufficiency in everything, you may have an abundance for every good deed. The Apostle Paul, yesterday we covered this, was talking about sowing and reaping. You sow sparingly, you reap sparingly. You sow bountifully. In other words, if you sow with a blessing, you will reap a blessing. And now the Apostle Paul is saying this. He's saying that grace is connected to your giving. And God is able to make all grace abound to you. Now, what is grace? Grace is unmerited favor, but it's more than just unmerited favor. It's an unmerited favor that brings about the ability to change. Grace. God is able. God is there. He is there. He's the giver of grace. He's the originator of grace. He is able to give you the grace. So he says, God is able to make all grace abound to you. When he says abound, it means that the grace of God is unlimited to you as a giver. Whew. How many of you realize you need the grace of God every day? You need the grace of God on your finances. You need the divine ability to make money. You need the divine ability to give what God has blessed you with. And the Apostle Paul is saying here, when you give, because you're giving, Corinthians, because of your giving, God is standing there and he's saying, here's grace, it's abounding, it's overflowing you. Here's my grace for whatever comes your way. Here's my grace. He's saying that God is able to make all grace abound to you, so that always having all sufficiency in everything. Now notice he didn't say just in the area of finances, he said in everything. Having all sufficiency, having everything covered, every need met. Having all sufficiency, both in your finances, in your health, in your emotional well-being, all sufficiency in everything, every area of your life. See, the grace of God comes, and it comes to the giver, and it comes with an abundance upon that person. It overflows that person, and you know what happens? All of the debts, whether they're spiritual, emotional, financial, physical, all those debts are met. All sufficiency in everything. And then he goes on, he says, you may have an abundance for every good deed. As it is written, verse number 9, he scattered abroad and gave to the poor, and his righteousness endures forever. What's the Apostle Paul saying? He's saying, if you'll be a giver, if you'll give according to the conditions that are listed here in 8 and 9, chapters 8 and 9 of 2 Corinthians, he says, you're going to have an abundance. You're going to be overflowing. You're going to have more than you can even consider. You're going to have an abundance for every good deed. In other words, you're going to see a good deed and you're going to have abundance to give to it. And then he goes on into verse number 9, and he quotes here from Psalms 112, verse 9. But he says, he scattered abroad. What's he talking about? He's talking about the saint. He's talking about God, that God scattered abroad, but he's also talking now about us as believers. That's the context of this verse. He scattered abroad and he gave to the poor. The Corinthians were doing what? They were giving to the poor. But notice what he says, and his righteousness. That's talking about our righteousness. It's talking about our right standing before God. His righteousness endures forever. Forever. We will live in righteousness. Now let's go on into verse number 10. He says, now he who supplies seed to the sower and bread for food will supply and multiply your seed for sowing and increase the harvest of your righteousness. What is he saying? He's saying, now he who supplies. Who is he talking about? God. God supplies the seed to the sower. He doesn't just supply seeds to everybody, but he gives seed to that person who's purposed in their heart, I am going to be a sower of blessing. I'm going to sow bountifully. And so God says, okay, here it comes. I'm supplying it. I'm bringing it in. I'm furnishing this seed. I'm giving you all the seed that you need to meet the needs of others. And so he says, he who supplies seed to the sower and bread for food. Who's the receiver of the bread? The person that sows. How many of you know that bread was essential for human life in these days that Paul is writing in? So Paul is saying God provides you the seed to give, but he also provides all of your food. He provides and supplies all that you need. And then he goes on, he says, and multiply your seed for sowing. In other words, not only does he provide seed for sowing, but then he begins, as you begin to give, he begins to multiply. Not just add, but to multiply for more seed for sowing. And then he goes on and he ends verse number 10. And increase the harvest of your righteousness. What's he talking about? He's talking about us then. How many of you know that we as believers receive a harvest for our righteousness? And when we give, God increases that harvest of righteousness in our lives. Thank you for watching. Join us again tomorrow as we continue our study in the book of 2 Corinthians.